getting so close to the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina. You know we're excited about it here on the show, and I'm so very excited today to talk to somebody who's on the ground. He is right now in Cortina. He's been living there for 5 years, believe it or not, and is getting ready to cover his 11th Olympic Games. You think we're excited about going to what will be my second Olympic Games. This is 11th Olympic Games. This guy lives at the Olympics. He has worked for a variety of prominent publications over the years. We're talking about NBC, we're talking about the New York Times, CBS, USA Today. He's worked for the US Olympic team, Around the Rings. He has been through all of them, and one of the most esteemed journalists when it comes to the Olympics going right now. It's a pleasure to welcome to Off the Podium, Brian Pinelli. Brian, welcome to Off the Podium.
All right, Ben, thanks for the very warm and thorough introduction. Great to be with you here today with less than 6 months to go, as you very well know, to the Milano Cortina Olympic Winter Games, the 25th edition. So the excitement is building, and I'm excited to talk some winter sports with you. I know, Aussie guy, you guys improve every Winter Games on the winter sports, but, our pre-interview talking some NHL hockey. I'm very confident that you have become a winter sports expert down under, Ben.
I like to think I sort of am, Brian. I mean, I'm not shy in saying on this show that as much as I do love the Summer Olympics, I'm more of a winter fanboy. It's always been the Olympics that I've always been fascinated. As an Australian, we don't see snow, we don't see these sports. It's always that one that sort of always excites me. So I've always been drawn more to some of these sports and get more excited talking about it. And we were talking off air, as you say, about certain loves of sports and all this kind of stuff. And you've sort of touched on a few things to me off air about what you got involved in growing up. But before we sort of get to some of these amazing things that you've done in your life as a journalist and what's happening right now in Cortina, tell us a bit about your love for winter sports and things along those lines that have drawn you to cover the Olympics and be there in Cortina right now.
Absolutely. It's been a long, exciting, long, strange trip it's been, to quote Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, but a good one. A New Jersey suburbs kid growing up, big hockey fan, going to Madison Square Garden with, father and grandfather as a kid to see New York Rangers hockey games. And interestingly enough, upstate New York maybe doesn't get enough credit, but my grandparents lived in a little town outside of the capital of Albany called Schenectady, New York. And Schenectady is about halfway between, New York City and Lake Placid, New York, right? Site of the 1980 and 1932 Olympic Games. So, I grew up as a skier, loving hockey. And on holidays, we'd go up to the grandparents in Schenectady. And from there, and back then there'd be massive amounts of snow on the ground, only throughout 3 hours up the New York State Thruway to lovely Schenectady. And, it just felt like a different world. You turned on local radio and, Colgate ice hockey was on and, sports going on in Lake Placid. So I skied Vermont, I skied Lake Placid, New York, upstate New York, the beautiful Adirondacks with their amazing winter sports and, winter Olympic history. Just was a diehard skier. My father introduced me to ABC Wide World of Sports, and, you'd watch Jim McKay toss it to the Honeycomb downhill in Kitzbühel, Austria. I said, what is this? There's 50,000 people at a ski race. This looks a party. I mean, this rivals, at least from TV, the American Super Bowl. And, it does for the Austrians. I just said, man, growing up as a skier and, the Adirondacks in Vermont, I said, man, I got to get to the Alps. I mean, look at these places, Kitzbühel and Wengen, Switzerland and Cortina, Italy. And, family didn't have the capability to go to these wonderful places, when I was in high school. But, just skiing there, obviously the 1980 Miracle on Ice, who as an American sports fan, not even a hockey fan, obviously everybody remembers Mike Eruzione and Jim Craig and the legendary Herb Brooks. So what an inspiration. So, date myself, but I was 10 during those games. We head up to Schenectady, New York. My parents say, yeah, we're going to Lake Placid for a day or two, I asked if I could come, and they kind of politely said, it's going to be cold. It's not going to be easy. They didn't have tickets. So, I got stuck at my grandparents' house. I wasn't thrilled about it, but nevertheless, watched the opening ceremony, watched the Americans win their opening hockey game against Romania. And from there, things just snowballed, so to speak. And, that was kind of the introduction and the early passion to winter sports, ski racing, hockey, and, bobsled and luge as well, Ben, which I know, you're a big luge enthusiast. Not so many medals for Australia, but hey, the sliding sports are intriguing also.
We got a skeleton medal. We take that on board after Beijing. But I mean, the one thing I want to say, and this is not to be I'm so used to getting younger people on this show now who literally will say to me, oh yeah, I remember my first Olympics being Rio or Pyeongchang. I'm like, yeah, God, yes, you're a child. Thanks for that. So it's appreciated for me now that I've got somebody on this who can say, my first Olympics were before I was born. So thank you for that. I appreciate that for once, Brian. Is that similar?
That was Albertville 1992 with CBS Sports. I was a college student in New York and had the opportunity to head over to French Alps, Albertville, which was, a dream come true and a huge career stepping stone. I didn't have a lot of responsibility at those games. Looking back, was a wonderful thing, going to hockey games at night and seeing some bobsled and luge and kind of getting introduced into the Olympic world there with CBS Sports, which, back before NBC had Albertville 92, Lillehammer 94, and, Nagano 98 before NBC took over the Winter Olympic rights. So, the 90s were special. Those were three amazing. I mean, all Olympic games were amazing, but, those three were, just special.
Did you harbor a desire as a skier to compete at the Olympics? Was this something you pursued before you got into the broadcasting world?
Well, growing up in New Jersey, even though we made frequent trips to Vermont, not so easy. Grew up skiing at a place called Vernon Valley Great Gorge. And, with all due respect, not a lot of Olympic skiers come out of there. Hunter Mountain was another destination. They kind of joked saying, hey, it's, New York City on the slopes. It's a little bit loud and, people ski in their jeans and, maybe, but, it was a good place. And actually coming out of Hunter was Thomas Vaughn, Lindsay's former husband, also a solid racer on the U.S. ski team. So he made it happen at a Hunter Mountain, New York, which, is not easy. So no, I just dabbled in ski racing, some recreational races and, beer races up at Sugarloaf, Maine. And so that, it wasn't really a realistic possibility. Although the last thing I'll say, mogul skier, the first women's Olympic mogul champion, Donna Weinbrecht, hailed from North Jersey, grew up skiing Killington, Vermont, where she honed her mogul skiing skills. And just fast forward to many years later, I'm in Park City, Utah. Many of my friends were on the U.S. Olympic mogul ski team. My co-host on a show called Road to Glory, Sean Smith. And these guys were some ripping Utah U.S. Olympic mogul skiers. And I would always tease them. I said, Sean, Craig Rodman, Trace Worthington, the greatest Olympic mogul skier of all time, at least back in the early days, was a girl from New Jersey, Donna Weinbrecht, Suicide Blonde. So maybe they didn't like to hear that, but so New Jersey, New York, we produced a few Winter Olympians over the years.
You've got that the mall there now out near the stadium, don't you? At MetLife. What's American Dream, I think, and it's got a ski slope down that. So maybe there are some people going out there after they've been to a Giants or a Jets game can just sneak off and do some skiing, right?
Absolutely, I did go there a few winters ago for a story for Powder Magazine and to enjoy some turns with my brother and father. And, it's a unique place. I mean, as a skier, you might kind of shake your head at it. But, hey, in the New York City area for, families from different countries that wouldn't imagine skiing, hey, it's 10 miles from New York City. It's, it's cool. It serves its purpose. I think just 150, 200 meter slope. And interestingly enough, in that mall, there is also an ice rink. Okay, no surprise. But they had the U.S. National Curling Championships.
I was about to say that. I was a week away from being able to go to it. I was so annoyed that I had to leave before they were on. So, yeah.
Yeah. So good for the sport of curling. You grew up in New York City. You don't aspire to be an Olympic curler, right?
No, and it's just in a mall in Jersey, basically. So, I mean, blows my mind as an Australian in a country where we've got like, what, 20 rinks in the entire country. That, you know, you can just, in the suburbs of New York, basically cross over and there you have one going right there. It's incredible. So, I mean, obviously you say Albertville's your first Olympics that you cover, but was journalism and sort of media then that goal? Was that something that you sort of picked up at a young age and obviously drew you a lot more towards the sporting side of that industry?
Sure, absolutely. You know, wanted to be a lawyer, an agent like Jerry Maguire. You know, that was the earliest inspiration. And, you know, I was looking at law schools and everything. And then all of a sudden I go over to the Olympic Games in Albertville and, you know, we're working and, you know, I don't want to say partying too much with the Aussie transportation department, maybe a little bit. And, you know, to see the French Alps and, you know, to be able to go to USA hockey games at night and attend the closing ceremony and, you know, work with some obviously top CBS Sports producers and announcers. The hosts of those games were Tim McCarver, a famous baseball player and catcher and broadcaster, and Paul Azan, who hosted CBS This Morning, Jim Nance, Greg Gumbel, you know, other legends. So to just get involved in that environment and learn so much and have some responsibility, but at that time to have the ability to, you know, to go to events at night and have a few beers in the local bar with the Aussie Transportation Department, which I mentioned, and you know, it was interesting because, you know, meet some of these great Aussie guys. Have a few beers, you know. I don't think they had Fosters there.
We don't drink
but anyway,
Fosters. We don't drink it.
No,
Come
I know.
on,
I know
we
that.
don't
Sorry,
drink
bad joke.
Yeah.
And then, you know, go to sleep for a couple hours, and the transportation department comes and picks us up in the snow 3-4 hours later. And I was like, wait, didn't I see you 3 hours ago down the road? And no, mate, that wasn't me. No, mate. I was watching Olympic, you know, bobsled on day. So I'm not so sure about that, but. Anyway, we actually, long story short, were able to commandeer one of the vehicles for the transportation department. I hope I don't get anyone in trouble, my colleagues, all these years later. And we obviously intended to return it, but we kind of had our own private transportation as a bunch of young guys at the Olympics for, you know, for 2 weeks. And I don't think the Aussie transportation department knew, or maybe they lost track of it, or maybe they didn't care.
They're still looking for it probably after, what, 33 years? Or it's still there. So when you go back in 2030, it's already just waiting for you, basically, right?
That's a good point.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That goes there.
Good times.
You touched on before sort of those 90s games. You said your Albertville, Lillehammer, Nagano, 3 amazing games in that period. What did you really see, like, given where we are now with winter sports and what we're seeing with all these new sports that have expanded in that period to today? I mean, what was sort of the Winter Olympic movement like at that point? Because obviously we then had the 2-year gap between Albertville and Lillehammer when they went alternating years. Freestyle skiing, short tracks being added, 98. You've got curling, you've got snowboarding. I mean, things that are staples today. People nowadays are just so used to it. But that was a real growing period, wasn't it, for the Winter Olympics in the 90s?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you just touched upon, you know, what comes to me, hits me the hardest is, you know, freestyle skiing and snowboarding. Obviously, you know, we talked about Donna Weinbrecht and a Frenchman, Edgar Groperon, who won the first men's Olympic moguls gold medal, and now is heading up the organizing committee for French Alps 2030. Had the chance to interview him at the recent election of the new IOC president there in Greece, obviously talking about Kirsty Coventry. But, you know, just said to Edgar, I said, we have to do our homework, but pretty sure you are the first freestyle skier who will now run an Olympic Games. You know, probably back then in the 90s, they would never want a freestyle skier or a snowboarder. You know, keep them on the slopes, let them have their fun, but let's not give them any organization or responsibilities, you know. So, and then, you know, obviously you can't help but mention Ross Rebagliati. You know, they're at 98, testing positive for marijuana.
Don't breathe it in. I didn't inhale, right? Bill Clinton. That's what you need to do. That's all. That's the secret, Ross. Come on.
So yeah, snowboarding, freestyle skiing in the 90s, which, you know, gave such a growth. And now, you know, right, we have just as many, if not more, I believe, freestyle skiing, free skiing, snowboarding events as alpine. So yeah, in the 90s, I think that's what really took off. I mean, you know, Albertville Also, the beginning of the unified team after the fallout of the Soviet Union. Germany competing as one as well. So some definitely some political changes, geopolitical changes in the 90s also. But hey man, this was the introduction of the freestyle skiers and the snowboarders. And what would as much as I love alpine skiing and racing and the high speeds, what would the Winter Olympics these days be without free skiing, snowboarding, half pipe? I mean, wonderful, incredible stuff, right?
It's hard. When we recently did on one of our news episodes, we previewed snowboarding and we talked about how like it's just such a staple now. You can't imagine an Olympics without snowboarding. But I mean, I vividly remember 98 when it was being talked about. And we had 2 events, did we not? It was just slalom and the half pipe back in 98, wasn't it, for the men and women? And now there's 6, 8, medal events. It's growing. I mean, it's sort of, do you see it in a way what we're about to see there in Cortina with ski mountaineering? I mean, this is the first time we're getting a completely brand new sport since snowboarding, one that we've never seen before in any form. Of course, skeleton, when it returned, it had been in the Olympics before. This is completely brand new. So do you kind of see this that we could be talking in 20 years' time, Brian, and Skimo is just a standard event, not this brand sparkling new thing that we don't know a lot about?
Yeah, good timing. Actually working on a Skimo story right now. Just got off the phone yesterday with a French woman, Emily Harrop, who was a 4-time overall champion. And a guy I know you interviewed recently, Max Drion, who kind of goes as the Swiss Belgian, and a chance for an Olympic medal for Belgium. Skimo will be up in Bormio. It will follow the men's Olympic alpine events on the final 4 days of the games. Should be thrilling, should be exciting. The format is non-traditional. Basically, it's a sprint race with about, I believe, 75 meters of elevation gain. 3 phases: climbing on skins with your skis up the hill, boot packing with skis on the shoulder, and then obviously the ski mountaineers clip back into their randonnée bindings, a special type of binding, right? Clip the heel back in and ski down to the finish. So it's a 3-minute race. It's often 6 skiers side by side, elimination heats. So it's a really cool, fast-paced, thrilling event. The traditional ski mountaineering are, long form races like the Trofeo Mezzalama in Italy and the Patrias de Glacier in Switzerland, where you're ascending, high altitude mountains up to 4,000 meters. And, the race can take 5-6 hours. But, like all sports, Olympic sports, one step at a time. And, excited for Skimo there in Bormio. And the athletes definitely are as well. And as you mentioned, the newest and latest, hopefully greatest addition to the Winter Olympic movement.
Very excited to see it. It's been too long since we've had a new sport at the Winter Olympics. Summer Olympics get all the new sports. We want to see these new ones in.
And keep track.
Kind of keep, exactly, how many are going to be in Brisbane by the time we get there. We're obviously going to touch more on sort of how things are going there in Milan and Cortina shortly. But in terms of just some of these other Olympics that you've covered, you've told me some great stories off air and through email exchanges about Salt Lake, and particularly a little story around Alyssa Camplin, our great gold medalist in the aerials, our first ever female gold medalist in the Winter Olympics, because you were working there, weren't you? You were working where the aerial skiing was, if I'm not mistaken.
I was in Park City, Utah for those games, and was fortunate and a lot of fun to have a live evening show on Main Street called Road to Glory with my longtime buddy. Shout out to Sean Smith in Park City, Utah, Olympic mogul skier in Lillehammer. So, we just had an absolute blast. I mean, the Alpine, or at least the Alpine Tech events, and the snowboarding were right there in Park City. Obviously, Utah Olympic Park, the bobsleigh luge, and the debut of skeleton, gold medal won by local guy Jimmy Shea with an unbelievable lineage in the Olympic world. His father and grandfather, both Olympians over the years. And then we had the freestyle skiing events up at Deer Valley, the aerials and the moguls on Champion and the slalom. But the freestyle events were compelling up at Deer Valley, which is, typically known as a pretty posh ski resort, which actually still, if I'm correct, doesn't permit snowboarders. But nevertheless, the unbelievable moguls run, which they continue to use every year in World Cup. and a spectacular aerials hill. And, the Americans were probably top in the world at that time. A couple of guys named Joe Pack and Eric Burgess, and the ladies also. And here comes Alyssa Camplin. And I believe she barely made the team after, what's her name? Jackie Stone, I think, had an injury. Sorry, Jackie Cooper.
Jackie Cooper, yeah.
And Alyssa just put on an unbelievable show. I guess it was only a few days after Bradbury's gold medal.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, hey, I'm witnessing history here. I just saw an Aussie gold medalist, Alyssa Camplin. And, she's not too bad on the eyes also. And she soars like unbelievably through the sky. So that was cool. And, I'll let you jump in and tell about Camplin, but then I'll continue the story because it continued from my perspective.
Well, it's I definitely want to hear the story because it's a fun little story you have on that. But I think my vivid memory is that because in the lead up to, those Olympics in both Nagano and in Lillehammer, we basically had the best female aerial skiers in the world between Jackie Cooper and Kirsty Marshall. They had dominated the World Cup. They had dominated World Championships, but just unfortunately every time it got to the Olympics, they couldn't quite nail it. So we had obviously leading into Salt Lake, we'd only had the 2 bronze medals from the short track relay in 94 and then Zali Stegel getting the bronze in the slalom. So there was a lot of expectations on Australia and particularly on that aerials event that it was going to finally come. No one expected Bradbury to win gold, so that was a bonus. But I think that was always the one that we looked at. So the fact that Alyssa did it, literally stuck the landing. We came away with 2 gold medals, which, still to this day is our equal best in terms of gold medals won at a single Winter Olympics.
Yes.
Iconic moment. And we love Alyssa. She obviously got the bronze in Turin, obviously a couple of years later as well after that. So, absolutely. She's our chef de mission now going into Milano Cortina, and she's very, very popular amongst all the athletes. But you nearly had her on your show, Brian, but a certain person got preference in terms of getting her on the show, right? This is a fascinating story how you missed out on getting her on your show.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. It still stings a little bit, and I very politely kidded her.
You know how Conan O'Brien feels, let's just say that.
All right, there you go. Good tip off. And bumped into her, as you mentioned, chef de mission for Australia. Bumped into her here in Cortina not too long ago. So anyway, down, and I guess my co-host Sean Smith wasn't right there, and we said, all right, we've got to get Alyssa on the show here. We were live on Main Street, 6 p.m. every night. So obviously the day events had finished. And did a short chat in the finish area, congratulating Alyssa. Obviously, she was swamped by media. And I said, Alyssa, 1 or 2 questions here, but if your schedule permits, myself and Sean Smith have a show on Main Street, right down the road from Deer Valley. So, pretty easy. We're live on a balcony overlooking Main Street. We're fun. I don't know if I said we were cool or not, because she was cool. And, her eyes lit up a little bit. And she said, she didn't even say, I have a busy schedule, which I'm sure she did. She said, okay, I'll do the show. And I think we pinned down a time, maybe the next night at that point, or 2 nights later, maybe 2 nights later. So Sean and I were excited, especially Sean. He said, oh, it's great. Alyssa Camplin, we got an Olympic champion from Australia. So I think that morning I get a call on the phone, and it's Alyssa's manager. I said, oh, great to hear from you. How's everything going? Congrats again to Alyssa. And she's like, yeah, thank you very much, Brian. We really do appreciate the invite, but unfortunately, Alyssa's not going to be able to make your show. I said, okay. Can I politely ask why? I'm sure it's a good reason, right? He said, well, she got invited on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and she's flying to Los Angeles in like 4 or 5 hours from now, and it's going to be a day or 2 coming back. We don't know the schedule, so he politely apologized. I said, I understand. Hey, you got to grab the exposure with Mr. Leno, with Jay Leno, as you can. But I think under my breath, I was thinking, what does Jay Leno know about winter sports? He probably doesn't even know what freestyle aerials is. But I said, congrats to you guys again. Congrats to Alyssa, and let's connect somewhere down the road. And she did the Jay Leno show. So for an Aussie athlete to to be invited on the Tonight Show. Props to her.
I want to go out on a limb and say she might be the first Australian Olympian to ever be invited on the Jay Leno show. I mean, I don't know if Bradbury got an invitation around then, but if he didn't, then she created history, because I don't think Australian Olympians were that much in demand to go on Jay Leno in 2002. But I mean, not a bad reason to get bumped from your show, Brian. Right? Like,
we accepted it. I think I've teased her over the years about it.
It could
politely teased her.
Politely teased her. You didn't do Turin or Vancouver, but then you do Sochi, and you've done every sort of winter games since. I'm going to ask the blanket question though, Brian. What has been your favorite Olympics that you have done? Because you've done 3 winters, and you've also done 7 winters, and you've done 3 summer Olympics as well.
Yes. Excellent question. Obviously, people love to ask this, and everyone will preface with every Olympic Games has its own personality and flavor and character, which is 100% true, and everyone is special for their own reasons. And but I have to say, with all due respect to my former town of Park City and Salt Lake City, Utah, and even my wonderful first Olympics there in Albertville, and an interesting games in Sochi and Pyeongchang. And I think you might get this from many people, but I have to go with Lillehammer 94.
Right answer.
Just, being from New York and New Jersey, and just 100% getting completely immersed in winter sports culture, the history of cross-country skiing, the little town of Lillehammer, more snow there than I could remember at probably any Winter Olympics that I've been to. And just the spirit of the people, the Norwegians. I mean, this is their bread and butter, right? They take their cross-country skis to the market and do their shopping. And, and obviously then it was a very compact games. I mean, everything was in the Lillehammer region. I mean, obviously you flew into Oslo, but there are no events in Oslo. So, it didn't get more compact than that. Okay, maybe Lake Placid back in 80. And to go to the cross country ski relay as an American, right? You don't see cross country skiing on TV. Okay, a little bit more now. And to see 100,000 fans camping in the woods, cooking meat, drinking aquavit 3 hours before the race. And, it was probably -10, -15 degrees, and 100,000 people.
Wow.
And a little cross-country skiing history. The Norwegians were the heavy favorites, the favorites with Bjorn Dali.
I was about to mention Bjorn, but my memory, like, that is, back to what I was saying about Salt Lake. I mean, in 94, coverage on Australian television was even less. But I do remember that was the first Winter Olympics I ever remember as a kid watching. And all I just remember is Norway. Not just because it was hosting it, but I remember I vividly remember the speed skater uniforms, because that was just all you would see on TV. The cross country. I as a 7-year-old in Australia, I'm not hearing the name Bjorn Dali. Who's that guy? But I vividly remember it, and I just have so many strong memories. And this is a random one as a kid, but that's the first ever Olympic video game I ever played. I got Lillehammer on the Sega Master System, and I played it to death. I loved it.
Wow.
So I mean, if I have to go back on my Winter Olympics in terms of absolute memories of watching it from start to finish, it was Nagano, and I have very vivid memories of Nagano. But Lillehammer was the first one that I do remember seeing on TV, and as a kid in Australia. And then the news that we got when we got the short track bronze medal, that was a big deal in Australia at the time.
And, just finishing up there at the cross country relay. So, 100,000 people there. And I actually had to leave before the finish, which was okay, because I, just completely embraced the entire event, and you couldn't get near the finish line, right? Obviously, all the passionate Norwegian fans and flags waving. But I was heading in a local taxi over to the bobsled track to go to work, and we're listening to the radio, cross country ski racing call. Don't hear in the U.S. And doing my best to kind of understand in Norwegian, and all you hear is Norway, Italia, Norway, Italia, Norway, Italia.
Oh,
dead silence. 20 seconds. My cab driver, fortunately, we were just on a little local snowy road. I mean, he stopped the car. He put his head down on the wheel. I didn't know what to say except, "I'm sorry." Italy nipped Silvio Fauner, nipped Bjorn Dali, I believe, and one of the most depressing upsets in Norwegian. Due respect to my many Norwegian friends in the Olympic movement, but the Italians got the better of them, and that was not a good moment for the country. It was devastating.
But
Let's be honest.
it's an eye opener, though. I can imagine for you going to 10 different Olympics in what, off the top of my head, is that 10 different countries? If I'm saying that, or no? Well, I guess you did Paris and Albi. That's France, so 9 different countries. I'll do the math later. But the point I'm trying to make is that you are experiencing the pride of different countries in sports that you're not used to. I vividly remember in Paris waiting in a McDonald's while 100 French people are watching judo, and they're going nutso for judo. Now, no disrespect to judo. I love judo, but like in Australia, are we watching judo? No. As you're saying, in America, you're not watching cross-country skiing. So you're experiencing these moments, which I'm sure even then in Italy as well, you're starting to get to that vibe of what are the Italians, who are the athletes, are they getting excited for? Because that's the beauty of an Olympics, right? We're so insular of our own countries that we think that's it. We're American, we're Australian. But there's 200 other countries that they're giving the same shits about their own athletes that we only discover when we're there, right?
So what's another draw to the Olympic Games, right? To see an athlete from a small country. I remember Adam Malysz, famous ski jumper, successful ski jumper from Poland, and he quickly becomes a national hero, and he sustains that for years and years and years. And I don't want to say it's a problem with the U.S. Okay, obviously there's a lot of Olympic medalists out there, but you win an Olympic medal in the 3,000 meter steeplechase, and it's hard to continue. And maybe it's not a goal of the athlete. Depends obviously on the personality, but to stay in the spotlight and succeed from. And so to see a guy like Adam Malysz or Alpine Franz Klamm, or a bobsledder like Wolfgang Hoppe from Germany in these so-called smaller sports, it was just a huge draw to me, with the Olympic Games, and obviously ABC Sports and Rune Arledge doing these up close and personal features where they went to Pierman Zurbriggen's farm in Switzerland and showed him cutting the lawn and having cheese before he goes out training. And that was so cool, and obviously so important to the Olympic movement on the American side, that Rune Arledge and ABC Sports really wanted to start telling the stories of these personalities. Nadia Comaneci, and so many, Alberto Tomba, so many others that the American public doesn't know. And then all of a sudden you're watching the games, and probably you're still rooting for the American, maybe not. And it's a battle between these unbelievable athletes, from a small nation versus a powerhouse like the U.S.
And that's also, I think, why I always appreciated the Winter Games. And again, it's not disrespecting our great Australian athletes in the summer sports, but obviously if we're watching the Summer Olympics, we're going into that expecting to win a large amount of medals. So we're focusing on the big name athletes. Whereas the winter athletes, particularly in the 90s and the early 2000s, when we weren't really expected to win medals, we can then learn about the Bjorn Dahlies and, these sort of people that I'm not going to learn about in the Summer Olympics outside of your Michael Phelpses and your Simone Biles, right? So like it's I always find that very fascinating. I bet you could never have imagined though, Brian, as a young boy in Albertville, that you would go to 10 Olympics, about to go to your 11th. I mean, you could have never imagined that this would be this journey that this is taking you on, 30 years later, and you're still obviously going to these Olympics.
Yeah, it's been cool. It's been a great ride. And now, being here in Cortina, as I was fortunate to have a similar situation, obviously living in Park City. The lead up is fascinating, right? And, most people know the Olympics are every 4 years or 2 years now. And, other than the local citizens and the local governments, people from other countries aren't really paying attention to an Olympic Games in another country 2 years before, 1 year before. The ad and the promotional campaigns in each country start a month, maybe 2 months before the games. So I've always also been fascinated, in some of its politics, but preparations and building and enhancing an infrastructure. And, unfortunately, spending a lot of money sometimes. Look at what Sochi, Russia did. That's an anomaly with the $51 billion that investment that went into those games that they said wasn't just for the Winter Olympics, but to improve our beaches and ski resorts. I mean, you kind of look at
50
that.
billion was to get their athletes to win a few gold medals, let's be honest. But we won't touch on that one, Brian.
Yeah, we won't touch on that right now. But you know, that's been a fascinating part too, really covering the lead up. And hey, there's always changes in organizing committees, and someone steps down or someone takes over, and citizens aren't happy, and hey, this is going on, and they're building tunnels out my door down the road here in Cortina. So, you know, and then obviously the athletes preparing and getting ready too, obviously. But I think kind of intermingled with the preparations is really interesting to cover. It's a lot of headaches for a lot of people. It generally gets probably more bad press than good press. And usually that changes during the games, which is a good thing, no doubt. But, you know, the lead up to the games is always I don't even know what the word to describe it.
A shit show.
Beyond challenging.
Yeah.
Well,
beyond challenging is probably a calm way. But I mean, that's a nice way of sending a message out there to our organisers of the Brisbane Olympics. It's, yeah, right, you had a few more years and you stuffed the landing a few times, but you've got time, all right? Look what's happening right now, a couple of months away from an Olympics in Italy. 7 years is okay, Brisbane. You're doing okay. You've at least drawn a pretty picture of a stadium. Let's just build it now. But Italy, right now. So let's talk about what's happening in Cortina. You're there. You've been there, as I said, for upwards of 5 years. How's it tracking, Brian? All jokes aside, are we looking good? Are we having an Olympics? It's all on track.
Tracking is that a little prelude, a little teaser there to what you're really getting at? Our big controversial. Completed Eugenio Monti bobsleigh track.
It's my sneaky way of asking on behalf of our bobsledders and lugers and skeleton. Will they be racing? Is essentially what I'm asking. Yes,
it's on track. It appears so. So end of March, under IOC deadlines, the pre-homologation was completed. Sledged down the track, bobsledders, lugers, and skeleton athletes. Most people probably didn't think this would happen. It took years for the right construction company to come around, take the risk, you know, to deal with these absorbent costs. Basically, they built this bobsleigh track, which, you know, hadn't been used since, I believe, 2008, 2009.
And this, to interrupt, this is initially the one that was back in 1956, correct? Like this is in the same area, yeah.
100%. And I mean, it dates back to the 1920s. I tell American sports fans, we talk about Wrigley Field in Chicago and Fenway Park in Boston, legendary venues. I mean, this Olympic bobsled track dates back 100 years. I mean, you talk about a history and a legacy. And, you know, obviously the big argument is, well, how many people actually bobsled around the world? It's not golf or tennis, right? Where you use it as a recreational venue every weekend with your buddies. But they persevered. The Italians and IOC said, hey, we have no problem if you move it to Sommeritz, Switzerland, or Innsbruck, Austria. As the deadlines approached, they actually accepted Lake Placid, New York.
I was going to say, that was an option, wasn't it, to ship it over to Lake Placid?
Yeah, we're going to go to Lake Placid for the Italian Olympics.
Hey, we had equestrian in the Melbourne Olympics in 1956 in Sweden. What does it matter, right? The other side of the world.
How's the Italian food in Lake Placid? Can I get a good carbonara? You know, how's that going to work out? So they persevered. In Lightning Fest time, they built it. There's obviously still a lot of work to be done, but the main thing is sleds went down the track, and the athletes, you know, with a few critiques here and there, were quite satisfied, and will continue to honor the legacy of the legendary Eugenio Monti, arguably the greatest bobsled driver of all time, who won the 1960 or was awarded the 1965 Hooverton Fair Play Award. So this was a little ironic. You know, the IOC is saying, hey, you know, you don't have enough time. It's too costly. Don't build this venue. Meanwhile, the man who it's named after is a Hooverton and the first Hooverton Fair Play Award winner. So, you know, it all comes full circle. And it's really fitting that the track is up and running, and they're going to honor the legendary Eugenio Monti, who won 6 Olympic bobsled medals, including 2 silvers in 56 Cortina.
You wrote a great article on sort of what's happening in Cortina. You sent me a link to it. And one of the ones that you touched on in this article too was the curling venue, the Olympic Ice Stadium, which was used back in 1956 as well. And as a James Bond fan, everybody knows it, of course, from For Your Eyes Only as well, a famous venue used in that one. But I love the photos and that you sent me of this venue, just the way they've sort of modernized it, but then kept sort of these very old style looking awnings and everything in the venue. It looks so stunning. I mean, that itself, I've got tickets to curling, Brian. I'm very excited to go to this venue. So, I mean, that is obviously one of the highlights too of the Cortina region, is it not?
Unbelievable. What a legacy. It's one of my favorite, we talked about, going to Ranger games at Madison Square Garden, and it's probably apples and oranges, but this venue, this hockey arena and Olympic curling venue in February of 22 had the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, Olympic ice hockey and figure skating in 1956. No roof, so an open air, ice arena, which you don't see very often. And, you look at the old photos and, obviously the cars in the 50s adjacent to it and the fact that they, lit the 56 Olympic flame there. So in February, it'll be solely dedicated to curling. Figure skating, hockey, and the ceremonies or opening ceremony will be in Milano. This great little small arena only holds about 3,000 people, which, is sufficient for curling. But as you said, the old wooden tribunes that Avery Brundage and Olympic officials sat at in 1956, still there. In 2003, I believe, they decided, hey, we need a roof. We want to use it year round. If snow falls, we don't want to cancel a hockey game. They enclosed it with a glass roof, big glass windows, and but kept the wooden bleachers.
It's gorgeous.
So it just has this combination. I don't know if you see this at many venues anywhere around the world where you really truly blend the historic with the modern, and it's just a cool arena, and it'll be home to curling, which will be exciting because Italy's local girl from the Cortina area, Stefania Constantini, and her partner Amos Mosner, who won gold medals in Beijing, the first ever for Italy. I joke that maybe curling could become the most popular sport in Italy, even more than football. People look at me like I'm crazy. I probably am. But nevertheless, that will be a thrilling venue, especially because of the Italians.
It's going to be crazy.
Doubles team at the top.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that I love about that, and what I love, say, in Paris, what they did where they had field hockey, which was obviously where they had the opening ceremony back in like 1924 in the athletics in the Summer Olympics. I remember all the way back in Athens, they had the archery, didn't they, in the original Olympic stadium, like things like that where they can tie that history into it. And when you're using a city that has done it, LA are doing that, of course, in 2028 as well. Like it gets me really excited for the history and that they're honoring that legacy, because I think it's easy to. And we've been guilty of it on the show here too, Brian. I'm not saying we're completely innocent, but of simply just calling it the Milano Olympics when it's Milano Cortina, and Cortina in itself.
Don't forget, people need to read. First time ever.
Yeah.
First time ever that two cities, or a city and a ski resort essentially, have been in the name.
And what is it, like 200 miles apart or something ridiculous like that, isn't it? Like it's a very long way apart. And discovering on my way of traveling there, as we were saying off air, not that easy to navigate when it comes to working out where you're going to go to some of these places.
Yeah, and I mean, it's about a 4.5 roundabout drive. But hey, these are new games based upon IOC Olympic Agenda 2020. We can use the cliches with the spread out venues, but also improving infrastructure, right? Vision focused on the future. Games as a catalyst for change. And my personal favorite, Ben, games that go beyond snow and ice.
And it's look, it's the way of the future. I mean, look, as much as we can sit here and miss the glory days of 7-year cycles and great elections and, the winner is Sydney and celebrations, it's not going to happen. And we need to be sustainable. I mean, we're seeing it in LA. The fact that we're having softball and whitewater rafting on the other side of the states. In Brisbane, we're literally having events at the very top of Queensland, which is a long way away from Brisbane. I'd say even further away than Cortina is from Milano. I mean, it's just the way that it is going to be. And if we want to, particularly with the Winter Olympics, with other environmental issues moving forward, we have to work out sustainable ways of keeping these games alive and hopefully not having to go down a path which they've floated of just having a permanent Winter Olympic venue every 4 years, because that loses the magic, doesn't it, Brian?
I don't like that.
We're just going to the same place. Come on.
I don't like it.
Yeah, me neither.
I know there's a big argument with sustainability and obviously our climate situation that there aren't too many places that can hold Winter Olympic Games and have a legitimate, downhill course. And just, last thing related to Cortina, our third venue Also, incredible history and legacy. The women alpine skiers will race on the Olympia della Tofana, which Tony Seiler won the gold medal on in downhill in 56, won 3 gold medals there. And it's just a wonderful run, probably the most scenic on the World Cup Tour. The ladies, Michaela Schifrin and Sofia Goja will, race down the Tofana Chute, which, super steep, 65% incline with two huge rock faces on each side. And it is just wonderful. So, the ladies are happy that they have this Olympic slope with all its history, challenging, technical, runs about a minute 45, 800 meters of vertical drop. And just a paradise, so scenic, and and the 3 Cortina venues are relatively close. Obviously, being a small resort town.
So I'm going to ask you selfishly for myself, but it's also going to be for anybody listening or watching who is also going to a Cortina for the Olympics. What's the tip, the big advice that you would give to anybody heading to that region, going to the Olympics, to really get the most out of their experience of going to that region to enjoy the Olympic Games?
That's a tough one. That's a challenging one. Embrace the mountain spirit. There could be delays. We know that with buses coming in. There could be heavy snowfall. It probably isn't too different from most Winter Olympics. But I think embrace the spirit and just enjoy the spectacular Italian Dolomites. And so much has been made over the years that the Olympics have to be compact and easy to get from venue to venue or venue cluster to venue cluster. And sure, people that are working hard and athletes, and there's a lot of truth to that, obviously. But I remember in Albertville 92, as a young guy, had some responsibility. I was hoping that the car ride or the van ride between venues was long. I wanted to see more. I wanted to chill out, relax, astonish. I didn't want to, okay, of course we were excited to get to the venue, but I didn't want to get to work. So, I tell critiques of the Milano Cortina Olympics, hey, relax. It's the Italian way of life, the Italian style, dolce na fiente, the art of doing nothing. And okay, if you're an athlete and you got to compete in the Olympic downhill at 11 o'clock, that's a hard deadline. That's important to make. But if you're a fan, you do have a little bit of time. A drive around the Italian Alps to get to venue, to get to Val di Fiemme from Cortina, or to get to Verona where the closing ceremony will be. I don't think it's such a terrible thing, providing you're not competing and need to be at the start line.
There are worse ways to spend a February, basically.
Right? That's my advice.
I like that. And what is you were touching on off air, about some delicacies and things that the Italians eat. And obviously you were explaining to me that regional parts of Italy have different ways of eating. But if there's one piece of Italian food that, as somebody who's never been to the country before, what do I have to eat?
I would say here in northern, Italy, with some Germanic influence. We are in Cortina, just south of the Sud Tirol, which where the biathlon event is up in Antiselva.
I'm going there. I'm looking forward to it.
To the Austrian border. Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and I didn't know it, and I joke, even some colleagues from Milano didn't know. And right, that's the amazing thing about Italy. One region appreciates or may not even know the food from another region, and they're okay with that because they love their own food. But Italian ravioli called casonze.
Okay.
And moon-shaped ravioli, Parmigiana cheese, nothing hugely out of the ordinary, very tasty. And inside, sweet beetroot.
Beetroot. I love how you call it beetroot. You're being Australian with me there, Brian. Thank you. You're not just calling it beets. You're calling it beetroot. I appreciate that. Good job.
And I wasn't so excited when I first heard about it. I said, there's beetroot inside. I like a traditional ravioli with, spinaci and, mozzarella. And but it's so tasty and wonderful. And one of the specialties of the Italian Dolomites.
I am that naive, dumb Western Australian guy who basically comes to a country and assumes they all eat I've eaten Italian in Australia. It's going to be the same everywhere you go. I was like that in Germany.
Pizza, right?
I know, right? I was in Germany and I'm like, give me one of those giant beers that you always see. And I'm in Cologne, the complete part of the country where they don't do the giant beers, and I basically offended the entire city. So things I learned when I travel, and aren't that just dumb, naive Australian. Brian, we're going to get to some get to know you style questions, which we always wrap up the interviews. But there's two things I want to touch on. One is that not only you've covered Olympics, you've covered a couple of Goodwill Games. One in particular, Brisbane 2001, the last edition of the Goodwill Games, sadly. But I want to ask you about that because I remember that period. This is barely a year after Sydney 2000. We're buzzing in Australia. We're loving life on multi-sport events. And there was a lot of goodwill, no pun intended, vibes around those games. What was it like to cover it? Because if people don't remember the Goodwill Games, this was essentially what? Ted Turner in the 80s, who was like, I'm sick of everybody boycotting the Olympics. I'm going to create a games where nobody boycotts. This is going to be like the greatest thing ever.
Exactly.
Combined winter and summer sports. I mean, we had figure skating. We talked to Johnny Weir about this. He competed in the Goodwill Games in Brisbane at a summer event. My long-winded way of asking, Brian, give me some Goodwill Games stories because we don't talk about the Goodwill Games enough on this show, and we should.
Interestingly enough, when Brisbane was awarded the 32 summer games, and everyone talked about, Brisbane's sporting history and, the wonderful venues. And I would always say, hey, the Goodwill Games is getting snubbed here. The Goodwill Games is not mentioned in the Brisbane legacy, which is unfortunate. As you said, this was Ted Turner's creation. The Cold War kind of ended. Said, all right, we went to New York, we went to Seattle, we went to Moscow, we went to St. Petersburg. Where do we go next? Brisbane, Australia. I was freelancing as a producer with TNT Sports. I had never been to your side of the world. And it was a tremendous experience. And, I wouldn't call myself a swimming and diving expert, but I was assigned to the swimming venue with my old buddy, producer Jim Carr. And they sent me with a camera crew probably 2 days before the games. The Aussie swimming team was practicing at, I believe, like a local middle school. And I had a cameraman and Jim says, Brian, we need shots of, Hackett and Thorpe and, some of the talented ladies. I said, oh, yeah, okay, I could probably, we'll make it happen. I get to this school. There's 30, 40 athletes in the pool. I have no idea who is who. How do you know this? The camera guys were Australian, so they did help me out to a degree. And I see a bunch of school kids sitting on the bleachers over there. I said, they're obviously, very enamored, very excited to see their Aussie heroes. I said, you know what? I'm going to go over to want to introduce myself. I said, can you point out Thorpe and can you point out Hackett? And can you point out? And they go, yeah, there. Camera crew, head, there. And I was just astonished how, these are, as you know, right, the rock stars of Australia.
They were household names. This is when swimming was its absolute peak in Australia. Yeah.
And it was a team event. There were 4 teams. There was Europe, there was Australia, Asia, and I believe the United States. And it was cool. Caught some track and field and, got around and, just enjoyed Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So I think there was the introduction at those Goodwill Games of, surf life-saving, and it was cool. That was cool.
We a period of time there, we were covering some Commonwealth Games, we're doing some World Cups, and that sort of stuff. We're steering back more towards the Olympics. So if we ever get to a point where we're out of content, I would love to go back and revisit the Goodwill Games because seriously, and the thing, I'm not also just glowing about this because Australia topped the medal tally and we never really topped the medal table and everything.
Wow,
so
you guys topped the medal, huh? Yes.
We were excited about that. But it's just the level, I just remember there being so much excitement in Australia for this event at that time. Because that was obviously after Sydney, we had that and then we had the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne a few years later in 2006. And this is what I'm really hopeful that we're kind of getting that way back in Australia because I feel like the vibe around Brisbane just hasn't hit those levels that we got in the lead up to Sydney yet. I know we're still a long way away from it. I understand.
Long way to go.
But it's sort of, we obviously had the Commonwealth Games, unfortunately, not be here next year after all the shit show that we had with that. So I feel there was a bit of a sour taste in the mouth around multi-sport events. And it's just, I'm hopeful that we're going to get that excitement in Australia. We're just, the time recording this, we're about to do our 25 years of Sydney 2000 and try and bring back those memories, those vibes of how Australia felt at that period of time. And the Goodwill Games are part of that for me, Brian. So I'm glad that you have fond memories of them too, because they were a great time in Australia in 2001.
And, of course, Ted Turner, right, call it a gimmick if you want, put up $1 million if a swimmer broke a world record in the pool. And I think Grant Hackett, I think came up a little bit short in the 1,500 meters. But hey, Ted Turner, he wanted to conquer the Olympics. He wanted to replace the Olympics. He didn't
Did.
quite get that far, but credit to him. And as you mentioned, Brisbane was the final edition. They talked about Sarajevo as a winter edition, considering the war in Yugoslavia, but it never happened. And yeah, so Brisbane has the distinction. I hope Aussie journalists will mention that in the lead up to 2032. Successful host of the Goodwill Games there in 2001.
It is sad because I was in Brisbane a week ago, and as you come through the airport, they've got this area where they've sort of got, big pictures of iconic Brisbane events. Very proud state, Queensland. They love showing off their history. And they have the big image of Matilda the Winking Kangaroo, which was a very famous mascot from the 1982 Commonwealth Games, of course, blazoned right there in the airport. And I'm thinking, all right, where's the Goodwill Games? Where's Keith Urban performing at the opening ceremony? Where's Matt Shervington? I remember Matt Shervington winning a bronze medal in the 100-metre sprint. Australian never win medals in the men's 100-metre sprint. All right, we never do. We never even make the bloody final. And here's Matt Shervington winning a bronze medal at the Goodwill Games. That's how excited we were.
Aussie.
Oi, exactly.
I think Men at Work played at the closing ceremony, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember that. I weirdly remember Keith Urban, and I'm even looking here on the opening ceremony on Wikipedia that the Corrs performed there because they're Australian. And you're not going to know who this is, but for our Australian...
Hunters and Collectors.
Often confused with Men at Work. But Bardo, who back in 2001... we had a precursor to like American Australian Idol. We had a TV show called Pop Stars where they found a girl band, and Bardo were the first winners of that. And for 1 year in our history, we're the biggest act in music in Australia. So for them to be performing at the 2001 Goodwill Games opening ceremony is so 2001. Let's just point that out. Because if Bardo were to perform at Brisbane in 2030, people would be going, who the fuck are these girls? So... that's wow, that is so 2001. The other question I wanted to ask.
It's times down under. Yep.
You said to me off air, this was not a planned question, but I'm going to test you now. You said to me that you came into this prepared. You did some research on Australian Winter Olympic history. You touched on Alyssa. We've touched on Stephen Bradbury. We've won 6 gold medals. Who was our 3rd gold medalist? And you've mentioned the sport of moguls. I want you to touch on an iconic man who is the absolute GOAT of everything Australian Olympics.
Dale Begg Smith.
You know it. There he is. The icon.
Yeah.
Do you know much about Dale? Do you know much about him? Do you know much about him at all?
I believe so. If I could go into the archives, wasn't he a multi-millionaire? One of the first tech, very innovative, creative
Canadian
guy who,
basically made his money from sending you those spam emails in the 2000s that you deleted. And he famously was told by the Canadian Olympic Committee, you can't do that. That's against our federation. And he basically was like, all right, well, screw you guys. I'm going to go find another country to ski for. Chose Australia. And to this day, is still our co-greatest Winter Olympian of all time. He won a gold and a silver. He won silver in Vancouver, tied with Tora Bright for a gold and silver medal. Scotty James is probably going to beat that in a couple of months' time. But at the moment, Dale Begg Smith. And he's an enigma. We love him so much because he basically, watch any interview with him, he basically gives like 2-word monosyllabic answers. But he then goes off into the wind. The famous story ahead of Sochi was that the AOC couldn't get a hold of him a month out from the Olympics. And they're going dude, you're our reigning gold and silver medalist. Where are you? Do you want to compete in the Olympics? We get to a World Cup. He apparently lives on this private island in the Caribbean. These are just all rumors. And he basically finally picked up the phone and was like, yeah, all right. And then basically got in a plane, got some points at some World Cups, rocks up to Sochi. Didn't do that well. I think he got 14th. But that's just, and then he goes back off into the mist, into the wind, and lives on his island. And to this day, I don't think anybody has heard from him since. So this is why we love Dale Begg Smith, because he is literally somebody in this country, Brian, that if you went to every man, woman, and their dog on the street and said, who is the most successful Australian Winter Olympian of all time, 9 out of 10 of them probably would say Tora Bright. No one remembers Dale Begg Smith in this country, but we are celebrating him because he is the GOAT. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe any possibility he just show up at the Moguls venue in Livigno as the color commentator for Australian TV. That would be awesome.
He is our white whale on this show, and I don't care if he comes on and literally says 2 words and buggers off. That's enough for me. I think, and as we keep celebrating, we've had some Aussie mogul skiers. We're saying the legacy of Italy, 20 years on from that gold medal, moguls, Italian snow, Like Jakara Anthony's our reigning gold medalist in the women's moguls. Like it's just history, Brian. It's going to happen again. And if Dale comes out of the mist into Italy, and if you're there on the ground and you see him, send him my way.
I'll let him know. After I ask him if he was inspired by Donald Weinbrecht from New Jersey.
Hey, of course. And he'll go, yes. And then he'll just walk off. That's Dale for you.
But you're summing up in a nutshell, obviously the most wonderful thing about the Olympics, obviously the vast and varied personalities and right from so many different walks of life and spectrums and economic backgrounds and, geopolitical upbringings. And that's the best part about the Olympic Games, covering 100%. The Olympic Games and watching the Olympic Games.
Absolutely agree with you. That's why we're doing it. That's why we're talking about it and getting excited for it. Brian, we always ask all of our guests standardized set of 10 questions. This is to get to know you a little bit better. Now, obviously, I have to tailor some of these slightly because some of these are maybe worded towards Olympians, but I'm going to, tailor them slightly to suit you. So you, as a journalist, you travel a lot, so I can ask you this question. What's the one thing you never leave home without when traveling to cover a competition?
Ski boots.
Ski boots. Ready to go.
I go with ski boots.
Do you have
I guess if I was going to a hockey tournament, it really wouldn't be necessary. But I'm going to go with ski boots, covering a lot of the World Cup ski tour. When I go over to the curling rink, I guess I don't bring my ski boots. But for most ski-related trips, obviously, I would go with ski boots. Skis you can rent. Skis you can get skis, demos from a ski racer or, a sponsor. But you want to have your own ski boots.
And you have a go-to pair? Like, have you got the lucky pair, or does it sort of depend on where you're going?
Just one.
Okay.
Reliable heads from many years. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Actually, just on hockey, I'll ask a separate question. A Rangers man, going into the Olympics next year, now that the NHL players are back, which we're very, very excited for.
Hold on. Sorry. All right.
Oh,
gonna put on the Rangers hat.
Gonna put on the Rangers hat for me there. That's what he was doing there.
Yeah.
I literally cheat and go for two teams. I'm a Flames and a Ducks fan. But I'm Australian. I don't live in our areas. I could have worn the jerseys, but hey, you got the Rangers hat on. Let's go there.
Happy to have you.
The NHL players next year, USA, Canada, are they going to be back on the top, or are we still needing to look out for like the Finns or obviously the Russians aren't going to be there, but I mean, we're always going to be wary of the Europeans, even with the NHL players there, don't we?
U.S. long overdue, right? Since the 1980 Miracle on Ice, and we continue to win junior world championships.
Yeah.
Just won the recent World Championships, although obviously with a very, very different roster. Yeah, we know Canada's a powerhouse. Sidney Crosby, his final swan song. So they'll be playing their hearts out for Sid the Kid. But I'll tell you, you mentioned one of the teams that impresses me, and not just in hockey, but for teamwork across any sport, is Finland in hockey, right? Such a small country, you can make the argument there's not a lot to do in Finland. But man, they won world champs a couple of years ago in 4 nights, knocking off Sweden, Canada, and Russia. And at that time, other than maybe Kakko Capo, former Ranger, they didn't have Olympians on there. They didn't have NHL stars on that team. So Finland comes together. It means so much for their country. And they play as a team, so watch out for the Finns.
Those celebrations once they won that goal were just insane. And when I did some work back in the day for when it existed, ice hockey in my home state of Tasmania, the president was a Finnish guy, and just to sort of live through him, and whenever there was an Olympics on or that, like I mean, I no disrespect to the great land of the USA, but I'm always a Team Canada man. But if Canada aren't going to win, I'm often on the Finland train, very glad. USA are next. I don't hate the US. I'm not.
It'll be wonderful. The NHL returning first time since Sochi 2014 there in Milano. Mm-hmm. And my other prediction is the Italians are going to have the best hockey uniforms designed by Armani in the history of Olympic hockey, maybe even the history of hockey. Just my guess. They may not win a lot of games, but they will look sharp.
I can't remember if any of the games I've got are to see Italy, but I hope they are, because I want to see that passion. I mean, some of the best memories I have from Paris is anytime you get a French athlete in any event, right? So to see those Italians would be absolutely insane. What's a traditional now this one's obviously what's a traditional superstition you follow before every big competition, but do you have any traditions or superstitions that when you're covering an event, or I don't know, like do you do anything before you write an article? Like you've always got to have a certain pen, or you've got to, something like that at all?
You're talking about reporting and not competing in my my pole vault days.
I mean, if you want to talk
dabbling?
about those iconic pole vault days, by all means, Brian.
Yeah, I think, obvious, but like anything, be prepared, right?
Mhm.
Be prepared for the moment, and obviously be able to, to pivot as necessary, because as we know at the Olympic Games and sport in general, things are unpredictable. That's one of the beauties of it. Right? Embracing the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, as was the ABC Sports Wide World of Sports tagline for so many years. So, just be ready as much as you can for the moment. Enjoy the ride, and don't drop your cell phone in the snow, which can happen at a Winter Olympics. That kind of sucks when that happens.
Good advice. I like that.
For interviews, not just, you're doing your interviews right with the phone and drop it in the snow. And my exclusive interview with Dale Begg Smith just goes out the window.
And let's be honest, I mean, and I'm not trying to say this to aid you, Brian, but because I'm from the same school, I want to say as well, from my journalism, training and upbringing, never just purely rely on that your phone or whatever is going to record. Still take notes. Still be prepared, because there's going to be that one time you're going to drop that phone and it's not going to work and you're going to lose a recording, right? So then you're fucked. But
you got to remember here, just to, give another tip to you, warm weather guys. Hey, obviously if it's snowing and it's raining or some combination, the pen ink, that's not going to work either. So,
true.
A combination of memory, technology, or you can always steal or borrow an interview from your, Austrian ski journalist friends. Hey, I screwed up. And you guys send me the recording of Michaela Schifrin. Usually, if you haven't pissed them off, they usually say yes.
I was going to say, as long as you haven't pissed them off prior to that, right? Like, be nice to your fellow journalists when you're out there.
Absolutely.
In the mediascape. Do you have a song that is on every one of your pre-competition playlists? I mean, just when you're listening to music, what's your go-to song that pumps you up?
Ooh, not competing. Maybe not. But I will reference my favorite winter sports athlete, the greatest ski racer of all time, Michaela Schifrin.
Mm-hmm.
And she's obviously gotten many questions, and one would be what's on your playlist? And I don't want to say I was surprised, but she said the wonderful Italian pianist Einaudi and his melodies and his mastery of the piano is so inspirational. So I've become a fan of his, and whether it's writing or perhaps before a competition, just like Michaela Schifrin, she's had a lot of success on the ski hill, so she knows what she's talking about. So I'm going to steal that from Michaela.
It's a great person to steal it from. I love hearing, because you certainly, particularly when you come to, say, asking that question to an athlete, certain sports you're going to expect a certain type of song, right, to get you in the zone. And I've discovered recently, say, through a lot of boxers, you think they're going to be listening to something angry, let's get whatever, but they're listening to bloody reggae and love songs. They're chill. They're going into a ring ready to punch a crap out of someone, listening to Barry White. You're like, all right, cool, that works. So I'm picturing Michaela on top of the mountain next year listening to some Italian piano. So
absolutely,
that works.
Giving away some secrets, hey. But I expect her. Excited for Michaela, expecting her to have a fantastic Olympics here in Cortina. Beijing, as we know, didn't go so well, but what she has accomplished in her career, 101 World Cup victories, approaching Anne-Marie Moser-Prol for the most overall World Cup victories, and let's see, she may not run the downhill here on the Olympia della Tofana, but 3 other events. So. Keep an eye on Michaela.
Can I ask you about another skier then, and also a snowboarder, Esther Ledecker? She's another queen of mine who I absolutely love. Obviously what she did back in Pyeongchang, and then got another gold in Beijing. But how's she tracking, do you feel? Because I know she recently had a bit of success earlier this year, did she not?
Yeah, I actually lived in Prague before moving to Italy, and Esther and her family lived down the road in Old Town Square when she wasn't training in the mountains, and obviously a rock star and a hero in the Czech Republic. I tell people that aren't skiers or snowboarders what she accomplished. And maybe because she's from a small nation like the Czech Republic, which doesn't always get its due, that is, in my mind, one of the top 10, maybe top 5 accomplishments in Winter Olympic history. No athlete had even ever competed in snowboard and alpine skiing at an Olympic Games.
Yep.
She was a favorite in the snowboard PGS. She shocked everyone in the Super G, winning 2 gold medals. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. She'll be back to attempt the double. Let's see, her third Olympics. The only problem is a little bit of a tough story. The women's downhill on Sunday out of the gate is the same day as the women's PGS snowboarding up in Livigno. So she's got to pick and choose out of the gate. They were lobbying the Czech Olympic Committee and Esther, and I was trying to help them out as well to have the schedule changed. Doesn't look like it'll happen. She can still compete in the Super G on Thursday at the Alpine venue, so she can still do both events. But missing the women's downhill, the training runs, to succeed in the Super G will be tough. And that's just unfortunate, and, I think talks are still going on with IOC and MC26, but it doesn't look too good. It's a tough situation for Esther, and she's phenomenal, obviously.
She's the queen. She's we absolutely love her, and I agree with you. I think just her achievements, absolutely insane what she did in Pyeongchang. And to me, one of my favorite quotes ever by any athlete was Lindsey Vonn. Her quote afterwards, she's like, "I just got beat by a fucking snowboarder," which, I mean, straight to the point, but true. Absolutely.
The Austrians were celebrating. I mean, not just Lindsay. The Austrians were in the finish area there in Pyeongchang. And they were celebrating a victory.
Her just stunned, that expression of her when she crossed the line and the comment. I mean, just gives me chills just thinking about it. Just one absolutely iconic moment.
You got to mention that. Got to mention that quickly. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened in the history of the Olympic Games. She crossed the finish line, no celebration. The cameraman said, "Esther, you just won." Yep. She said, "No, I didn't." She thought there was a timing mistake. Yep. She said, "I was embarrassed for the organizers that the timing got messed up."
It harks back.
Unprecedented in Olympic history.
I love, reading Olympic history, like we're talking 1896, 1900. I mean, the great Edwin Flack, Australia's first ever Olympic gold medalist, the fact that he can win 2 gold medals in athletics and back it up with a bronze in tennis. I mean, you're never doing that nowadays. And obviously it was 1896. It was a different time. But like that, to me, when you can go and win 2 medals in 2 different sports, we've got an Australian cross-country skier, Phil Bellingham, triple Olympian, who is on the cusp of making his 4th Olympics in cross-country skiing, but he's also trying to qualify for ski mountaineering. So he could be in both. In Milano Cortina, which would be insane.
That would be amazing.
And off the top of my head, I don't think any Australian in the Winter Olympics have ever competed in 2 different sports at the one games. So, yeah, an achievement in itself. So, obviously, we're hoping you do that.
Hope it happens.
What is the most unexpected or funny direct message or email, let's say, you have ever gotten? This is obviously as an Olympian, but as a journalist, what have you ever gotten, like a weird request or a weird comment or something on a story or anything you've done before?
I have to rack my brain on that one. An email or some follow-up on a story. Besides being criticized by the mighty Olympic consultants, many of whom happen to be from the UK, and they're happy to buy you drinks at the bar and wine and dine you. But if there's one line in a story that's not wrong, but they don't like it, that the cell phone is ringing off the hook. And those Olympic consultants out of the UK.
The Brits. Always them. Always the Brits.
I don't know if there was profanity involved, but something like, Brian, we need to have a talk.
When you say certain...
I think I have ski training, or I need to be somewhere. Can we get back?
Smith is calling me. I've got to go. Sorry.
It's always a UK number. I don't get myself in trouble here. When I have a UK number, I generally don't answer the phone.
There's some advice for people listening from the UK right there. Mask your number when trying to call Brian. The weirdest thing that you have ever eaten at an international event, and did you like it?
I wanted to I like that question very much. I wanted to mention this before when we were talking about Lillehammer, and this leads into that. During the Lillehammer 94 games, there was a hardware store downtown, and smartly, the owner said, "I'm probably not going to sell a lot of hammers or nails during the games. Let's convert it into a bar. Why not?" And it was a bare bones bar, few tables, not many, nothing fancy. And they were serving reindeer stew there in Lillehammer, Norway.
Wow.
End of a long, hard day working, a couple of buddies. It gotta actually. I don't think there were too many choices on the menu. I think there was probably two. One being reindeer stew, with some nice rice, and I think we washed it down with a ringness and probably an akavit.
Mm-hmm.
So, very tasty after a long, hard day at the Olympic Games in Norway. What better to have some reindeer stew?
Bit of Rudolph on the side with some rice. Why not? You know, when you shine your sleigh at night, basically in the stomach. Why not? Yum yum. That's good to me.
Love Norway.
On the topic of food. What's your ultimate guilty pleasure meal, Brian? Like, I mean, generally, again, this is after a big competition, but like, what's your go-to dish that you've always got to have when you're hungry, you want to eat something?
Yeah, in Paris. In Paris, unfortunately, after midnight, many places closed. There were some, late night heating up in the microwave oven there in the beautiful City of Lights with all their amazing cuisine. But sometimes it was just too late. When time permits, ravioli, spinach, ricotta ravioli here in Italy. Casande is amazing, but got to go with the traditional ravioli if it's available late at night or here at home, obviously.
I like
Can't go wrong.
Like the sound of that. I know my where I'm staying in Milano is sort of a bit out of the city, and kind of it looks like there's some nice, like real, like good local restaurants, and I'm kind of vibing on the fact that because I'm not like right in the city, that's going to be where there's going to be like traditional good food. It's not tourist heavy, right? So
that will be fantastic.
That's what I'm hopeful for, and I feel I'm going to have to come back with some extra large clothing just based on all the pasta that I'll probably be eating.
Because you're walking. I mean, I don't know if you're a skier, but you're walking around the mountains. It's kind of the outdoor vibe. Yeah. I mean, hopefully.
Well, I mean, I will admit, in Paris, I mean, the amount of pastries and bread that I ate mixed with the amount of walking that I was doing, it did balance out. Yeah. So, you kind of, you 6 of one, half dozen the other, right?
It'll be good. Pasta is not as, not as bad for you as people think in large quantities.
The carb, right? Gets the burning. That's what you got to do. Now, this one obviously is a bit different because generally I'm asking this to an athlete. So the question is generally, if you could swap sports.
I was an athlete back in the day, like all of us journalists, kind of.
The pole vaulting, right? That's what we're talking about. If you could swap sports for a day with another Olympian, what event would you choose, and how do you think you'd fare? But I'm going to open to a different style, Brian. If you were able to choose any Olympic sport for you to compete in, to be the Michaela Schifrin of that sport, winter or summer, what are you choosing?
I am going with the 13-time world record breaker, the latest in Budapest, Hungary, just yesterday, Mondo Duplantis in the pole vault.
You are going as a guy that, I love it.
Guy that I dabbled at about 13 feet. Mondo now has gone 7 feet, 7 inches higher.
The guy's a beast. He's a beast.
I mean, my idol is Sergei Bubka. And, Mondo, with all due respect to Mondo, I mean, it sounds crazy, due respect. He's still got a long ways to go, in my opinion, to get to Sergei's 30-some world records and 5 world titles, and Sergei the first to jump 20 feet. But, Mondo undoubtedly is on the way. And, as an ex-pole vaulter, I just want the feeling of soaring over a bar 20 feet in the air, 70,000 people in the Stade de France going nuts for you. Ski racing's pretty darn exhilarating, but pole vaulting 20 feet, considering there's only been a handful that have done it. Got to go with the pole vault and Mondo.
Well, it's a unique question I can now ask, Brian, because I've actually, in all the interviews I've ever had on the show, we've never actually had a pole vaulter on this show. And I've always wanted to ask, what draws you into pole? Because, I mean, it is one of those sports where I often think, what makes people want to do pole vault? That is an obscure sport for you to choose. So what was it about pole vault that drew you to it when you did it?
Yeah, I think my parents wanted me to play tennis. I was an decent baseball player. Sergei Bubka at the Goodwill Games, 1986 Moscow, soaring, almost 20 feet, saying, man, that looks cool. How is that possible? This is unbelievable. And, funny enough, at some Olympic conference in Prague, John Cleese of Monty Python fame had a little press conference. And I think someone asked him the same question. And he said, he goes, the pole vault. He goes, how the hell these guys? They're running on the ground. Next thing you know, they're 150 feet in the air. He goes, yeah, the pole vault. So I agree with John Cleese and my longtime pole vault buddy, Marco Cortazzo, New Jersey state champion. What a fraternity pole vaulters are. They're competitors, but they're all brothers because doing the same thing that can be dangerous at times.
There are so many sports which, I mean, are great to watch, but it's sometimes you do literally have to
Steve
go
Hooker, the great Australian pole vaulter.
Well, I was going to mention, Steve, the one I vividly remember as a 13-year-old boy hitting puberty, of course, was Tatiana Grigorieva in Sydney. On the famous night that Kathy Freeman wins the gold medal, she's off in the middle of Stadium Australia getting a silver medal, and just beautiful, beautiful woman, and captured the hearts of Australia and teenage boys. But I mean, still an iconic moment. I'm not here just to perv on her. She was a great athlete as well. So it was, yeah. I mean, pole vault. It's the theatre. I love the theatre of field events where the whole stadium stops and you're clapping someone and you're watching him getting go. I mean, I say that with aerial skiers. Like, come on, guys, get that crowd involved. It's kind of like track, but like, long jump, high jump, all these events. It's the theatre, and pole vault's one of the fun ones. So I'm a wimp, Brian. I can barely run. Don't put a pole in my hands. Come on.
I'm waiting for the new Winter Olympic event, and I want to see them introduce the snow and ice pole vault. You're either on hockey skates, zooming down. I mean, someone that's a proficient skater and a great pole vaulter could jump, 22, 23 feet maybe.
There are a lot of. I discovered this recently.
If they don't cut themselves.
Well, true. You might want to not do that. That guy, what was he? The guy who's, his appendage hit the bowl. That's a bit different if there's sharp things involved. But I have
among other body parts hitting the bar.
Exactly. But like I mean, it's interesting where there are winter versions of some summer sports that people don't know a lot about. Like I discovered that there is a push to get snow volleyball in the winter. This is a legitimate sport that they want to bring in. So I'm thinking there are all these other ones that maybe Sebastian Coe wanting these bloody summer events in the Winter Olympics. We'll make them winter versions, Lord Sebastian. Yeah. And then we can talk, right? Anyway.
It's gotta be tough to handle the snow and ice, with all due respect to the summer athletes, man. When the wind is whipping and it's cold and the snow.
Summer athletes.
Takes another personality.
Come on.
Although, do you remember Franz and Hans of Saturday Night Live fame? There were two Austrian bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And they said, these winter athletes, they play in the snow, they slide down the mountain. Those aren't sports. He goes, we're in the gym. These are real sports, right?
It also just reminds me of Cool Runnings, when he like comes out of the airport and he's put all his clothes on and he puts his suitcase on his thing. And then when he gets the costume, he's like, I freeze in this. They
walk out the door and they're like, this isn't such a good idea.
Welcome to Calgary, Alberta. It's like -18 or something stupid like that. I love this question because this one can relate to you as well. If the question is, if your Olympic journey were a movie, what would the title be and who would play you? But I'm just going to say, if your career, if we're making the Brian Pinelli movie on your amazing journalism career that's taking you now to 11 Olympic Games, what's the movie called and who's playing you? I've got some help for this one. I've got some help.
You told me you're just a podcaster and not a hard-hitting journalist. You lied to me, Ben. You said it's all fun and games.
I'm a true journalist. I trap you in, I butter you up, and then I ask you the big ones.
Am I able to do the savvy athlete kind of turn the question in a different direction and not answer? I mean, I'm excited. I'm going to do that, and maybe I'll come back to your answer. Bruce Springsteen coming out, film about his life in New Jersey, growing up in the 1970s. That is, I'm excited as a Springsteen fan, as a Boss fan. Just saw him in Milano at San Siro Stadium, right, where they'll have the opening ceremony at this iconic, Italian football stadium. And it was just electric. But
he's connected to the Olympics. His daughter is an Olympic medalist. So I mean, that's
absolutely, yeah,
connected.
Yeah. So talked to Jessica in the lead up to Tokyo, and hey, not a bad thing when the dad's the greatest live rock and roller of all time, and daughter has an Olympic silver medal. So kudos to Jessica there with the Team USA in equestrian.
I'll answer the question for you in a moment because I've got some help from ChatGPT. But what is the name? Because when I was there recently, I have a friend who lives in Jersey, and she's a big Springsteen fan, and she took me to the town, the beach where he's from. What's that place called?
Asbury Park. Asbury Park, and where you grew up playing.
Beautiful place. Beautiful
Jersey
place.
Shore.
Yeah, it was amazing. The thing that blows my mind as an Australian, Brian, I'm there in like basically the winter, but the fact that you guys charge to go on the beach in the summer, that's like, you do that in Australia, you're getting like deported. You don't charge to go on the beach in this country, but.
Well, I mean, Italy does it too, right? The umbrellas in front of the nice hotels. But I agree. Getting to Bondi Beach and there on the Gold Coast during my time in Brisbane, unfortunately, not enough time. And wow, just paradise. So we have to have a beer in 32 in Brisbane.
We will. We're gonna have a beer in Cortina as well if you want, like just a bit.
Or a glass of wine. You know, you can have a Valpolicella Riposa. If you like white, a Suave. Not to say the beer isn't good, but we'll get you up to speed on the Veneto wines.
Culture me, Brian. I'm an uncultured Australian. I need help in that. So the answer I've got here. So ChatGPT gives me some advice for this one, and so they've given me like 10 different titles. I'm not going to read through them all, but I've chosen one here because I like this one that they've gone here. They've suggested a movie title called Frozen Headlines. That's a pretty cool title. And what I've done with that then, Brian, is I've asked them to produce a movie poster. I'm going to hold this up, and for our audio listeners, you go to our YouTube channel and watch this. This is what they think the poster could look like. Frozen Headlines, Chasing the Winter Light. There you are.
Just the headlines, not the image.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, right.
And there's
Hopefully.
a picture of you. That's what they think you look like. So there you are. No, it doesn't really resemble you, does it? No. But
the headline's not bad. I'll have to steal it down the road.
The Brian Pinelli, it's a good movie. Coming soon to theaters near you. They suggested people like Stanley Tucci could play you. Mark Ruffalo. John C. Reilly. Not bad. Alfred Molina. Jeff Daniels. Not bad. You know, actually, I see a bit of Alec Baldwin to you. Have you ever been compared to Alec Baldwin? I think Alec Baldwin would be a good person to play you.
Can I do my own ski stunts?
Of course. Don't have any guns.
Like James Bond, Roger Moore there here in Cortina, going down the bobsleigh track, being chased by motorcycles with guys with guns.
I'm going to rock up to the curling and I'm going to be like, where's BB? Is BB here? I'm just going to get too excited for the fact that Roger Moore was in that building. You know, too much.
Hockey players, goalie almost killed him.
I know, right? Too much of a Bond fan to get excited for that. Two more to go here, Brian. What's the one question? You're a journalist. You don't often get asked questions. You're the one doing the questions. But if there is one...
I'm not good at answering. I'm better at asking, I think.
You're good at spinning it to Bruce Springsteen. I like that. What is the one question you are tired of being asked, and what is the one that you wish people would ask you instead?
This is hard-hitting journalism.
I know.
Gotta go back into my Jim McKay mindset. Legendary Jim McKay, Al Michaels calling the Miracle on Ice in 1980. The mix zones, rightly so, have become so not confusing, but complicated over the years. There's, 12 different sections and areas, and, you're a photographer here, but you can't go here, or you can't cross through an area.
Yep.
So I guess being told, and I'm respectful and polite and, accept the Olympic regulations, but maybe not as much Olympic than a World Cup race. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Like, you can't cross through this area, but yet if you go around, you can enter that area. So why can't I? So that would be, being told. And for a reason.
Fun story on that for you, Brian. The Commonwealth Games in 2018, my job there, I was a mixed zone manager. So I was in control of the boxing mixed zone. And we were specifically told, like, as you were saying, like, this is who can come through here. This is, whatever. And I remember we were specifically told that only athletes can walk through this area. Sure. The Queen of England could have shown up and I would have had to tell her no. And there were two occasions where I was faced with a situation where I had to tell pretty prominent people no. I had the chef de mission of the Indian delegation just rock up. And I literally had to be like, you can't be here. And I got the whole don't you know who I am card, of course. But then I will admit the Australian chef de mission, the great Steve Monaghetti, legendary marathon runner in our country, he showed up and I may have let him stay. It was a 2-week job. What are they going to do? Fire me? But I was like, it's Steve Monaghetti. Like, come on, this guy's a legend. I admit, because then, like, on the flip side of that, when I was in Paris and you would get sent to, 5 different sports in 2 days, there'd be one, that you can do this, you can do that. Then the next day, there's somebody yelling at you because you can't do this. I got accidentally sent onto the field of play for skateboarding just as Snoop Dogg was about to walk past and somebody yelling at me. I'm like, dude, you told me to come here. What the hell? It is confusing. So basically my long-winded way of saying I agree with you, and also sucks being that person telling you that you can't go to those places.
And what I always love being asked, by fellow ski journalists or skiers or buddies is, hey, tomorrow's a training run. You want to take a half day off and go powder skiing? So
put on the skis.
Almost, work permits. I'll almost never turn down that offer.
But how often though are you going, like, skiing's technically part of my job. It's, I need to learn about the craft that I'm interviewing my athletes about. So it's work.
It's one of the few sports I think that you cover that, if you have a little break and big resorts. Okay. Yeah. The Olympic downhill run is closed off, but you can go nearby and make some turns. So, one of the benefits of covering ski racing and, on a training day or even on a race day, journalists, if you apply ahead of time, you're allowed to go up on the course during inspection. And there's nothing more fascinating to see, Michaela Schifrin or Betta Brignoni or Sofia Goggia, visualizing the course and talking lines with coaches. I mean, right? Journalists have access near the field of play in most sports. But I'm trying to think. I don't think you're really in too many on the field of play side by side with the athletes preparing.
It's true. Yeah, no, it's right. Like it is a unique sport where you can do that.
You got to be careful, obviously. It's, you catch an edge and you're embarrassing yourself sliding down an icy mountain. And, if the cameras are fired up, you're in trouble. But,
you're
it's
not
cool
at Madison Square Garden before a Rangers game skating next to the Rangers, are you? So,
no,
I mean, like,
not.
it's the comparison there. So, that's a very
You're not
good
listening
point.
to the goalie. You're standing next to, Henrik Lundqvist, Olympic champion, discussing strategy with his goaltender coach. In ski racing, if you're brave enough, you can do that.
Is 1994 like your favorite sporting event you've ever experienced? Like watching the Rangers win the Stanley Cup? Like, is that to you your favorite sporting memory?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I was an associate producer with the NHL Productions and was in the locker room that night.
Oh, wow.
And, their first Stanley Cup after 50 some years, breaking the curse. Captain Mark Messier. So, it was just good timing to have this assignment. I quickly got some interviews done with the Vancouver Canucks, who lost in 7 to the first.
They're used to
I
that.
said, all right, I hope my producer doesn't get mad, but I think I got enough from the Canucks. Let's get over to the Rangers locker room.
And just keep celebrating. It's crazy, isn't it? Those moments where you get to experience, like, as a fan while you're being professional, right? Like, you're sort of like, I'm sure your emotions at that point are pretty darn high, but you've also got a job to do at the same time.
Yeah, wonderful moment there at Madison Square Garden, June 1994, and haven't gotten the job done since, so we will see.
Close a couple of times, right? So
we have been.
It's that way. Last one for you, Brian. Again, I don't know how you're going to answer this, given this is directed at athletes, but take it how you will. What is one lesson that you've learnt from losing that has shaped you more than winning?
Yeah, in the spirit of Coubertin and Olympism and the Olympic movement, it's just as important to take part as is winning. Yeah,
good answer.
Be there to learn about yourself, to deal with adversity, overcome the little challenges. I don't want to get too cliche here with Olympism and the Olympic movements, but I think they all ring true.
And just actually one quick note. This isn't a question we generally ask, but we were talking the other day. We did our
save these tough questions for Dale Begg-Smith and
if Dale Begg-Smith could answer this,
swimmers.
If he could answer this next question, I'd be very, very impressed.
Losing to the Americans in the 4x100 in the pool. See how I'm kind of
smashed you like guitars. Good way of bringing that up. But we recently did we do a series where we go back over classic opening ceremonies and kind of review them after a certain amount of times. We just did Atlanta, and obviously their centenary Olympics going over the 100 years. Do you think there will be some level in Cortina, Milano next year of celebrating 100 years of the Winter Olympics? Obviously, it was 100 years last year, but given that this will be the first games since that centenary, do you think there will be, or do you know, are there any plans to kind of celebrate a centenary of the Winter Olympics at all?
Good question. Right, it has passed by. Chamonix 24, obviously being the first Winter Games. So we're 102 years. Yeah, it would be amazing. I mean, the closing ceremony will be at the arena in Verona.
Yeah.
2,000 years of history in wonderful Verona. I can only imagine what the Italians will present. Perhaps in the opening ceremony in San Siro, it would be it would be fitting.
I think they should. Like just rewatching Atlanta, it was kind of like it was a good nod that they did for the centenary. So it'd be nice. I hope they do honor it. And let's be honest, I think Italian closing ceremonies at the Olympics, I think Ricky Martin from Turin. Is Ricky going to make an appearance at the closing ceremony? The most Italian guy ever, right? Ricky Martin. Very random way to close it.
Yeah. Springsteen at the opening ceremony in San Siro.
Yeah.
A legendary venue. The Italians love him. 80,000 people.
Hey, if we learn anything from Paris, they don't exactly use their own singers. So Lady Gaga, Celine Dion. Okay, cool. So the Italians are probably going to pinch Springsteen and shove Bon Jovi in there, and I don't know, all the other ones. Chappelle Roan.
Well, there'll be some amazing tenors, some amazing classical music. We can only imagine the orchestra there at the closing ceremony in Verona after 2 wonderful weeks of the Italian Olympic Games, building on the legacy of Cortina and paying tribute to 2,000 years of Italian history. That will be magnificent.
We are looking forward to it, Brian, and we really appreciate you joining us to chat about your amazing career and everything that's happening. If people want to follow you, website, social media, where can people stay up to date with what you're doing there in Italy and what you will be doing during the Olympics as well?
Absolutely. How about Instagram, Brian.Pinelli? And as we will continue to keep in touch there as well, Ben. So, awesome. And some stories coming out in the IOC Olympic Review shortly as well on ski mountaineering and other fantastic winter sports.
We'll keep an eye on it, Brian, mate. We really do appreciate your time. We'll get that wine in Cortina. We'll catch up and we'll get you back on after the games and we'll hear some amazing stories about your 11th Olympic Games. Your 11th Olympic Games, Brian. I'm sure you're going to have an absolute blast.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you very much, mate, as I should say to my my Aussie buddies. But no, fantastic, Ben. Thank you so much for your hardline questioning. I'm sweating right now here. Going to try to recover and maybe have some Italian ravioli, and maybe it's not too early for a glass of Valpolicella Ripasso. We are in Cortina after all, but hey, look forward to seeing you as well in Cortina, catching up. The 56 Stadium will be amazing. Get up, see the women's downhill if possible, or at least women's ski racing, and some exciting high-speed bobsleigh and luge. Cortina is going to be the place to be with due respect to the fashion capital in Milano.